we're joined by Gerry Creighton, all the way from a lion near Abu Dhabi. We're going to have a little chat about being a zookeeper and his new book and what he's doing at the moment, all the way over there. Hiya, Gerry. How are you?
Hi, Fiona. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be able to talk to the students. It's a passion of mine too. One of the great things about being a zookeeper is you're constantly talking to people and interacting with people, and that's something I really enjoy. Particularly, the next generation of students, and people are so interested in about what it takes to become a zookeeper, what it involves, and the role of the modern zoo. So, thankfully, it's changed. It's changed so much from the time when I was a young zookeeper. Like, I was lucky enough to start my career with my dad. I was a second generation zookeeper, and I was going up to the zoo from the time I was 5, 6 years old. But now, like, education is a key part of it. It's a key part of even starting off in the zoo. Obviously, biology is an excellent, zoology is obviously a great science to follow, but zoology and zookeeping are very different. I have to stress it's not a necessary. It's not a sticking point. If you don't have zoology, it doesn't mean you don't be a zookeeper. For to be a zookeeper, the main keeper course is done with Sparsholt College in Hampshire. And that's recognised by both BIAZA, which is the British and Irish Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and it's also recognised by Dublin Zoo as the intro into zookeeping, and that would cover like really interesting topics. It's not that you're sitting down, studying really hard scientific stuff. It's not. It's understanding population management. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, breeding programs for zoos. It's a lot of people don't realize that even though we have endangered species in zoos, it's not a case that you can continue to breed them and breed them and breed them, because there's only a certain amount of institutions that can hold them. There's only a certain amount of genetics. So you have to understand the genetics. And for example, like for every endangered species that's part of an international breeding program, there's a stud bookkeeper who would know all the animals in Europe and would say, like, the Dublin lion goes with the London lion because of genetics and all those reasons. So the course, the Sparsholt course, which is, a zoo animal management course, specifically trains you on that. Habitats, planting. Planting is a very important feature for natural habitats nowadays, and Dublin Zoo has done an incredible job from the time when I started. But this is all stuff that I depict in my book too, where it was cages and confinement and bars and steel, to these incredibly open, lush. Vegetation and trees and seasonal variations. So you learn all about planting. Training animals is a really, really important one to do. And I'd even say, like, if you had in your transition year, or if you were interested in going forward with zookeeping, training animals is key. And this is one of the jobs I'm doing here in the UAE in Al Ain. I'm training the elephants for foot care on a voluntary basis using a reward based system. So I stand in front of the elephant. There's a protected contact wall. Now, it's not a wall as we would imagine, it's a steel frame. But the elephant is on one side, I'm on the other. But there's foot ports, there's ear ports, where I can train the elephant using target sticks. So how you start off the process is you touch the elephant's head, you throw a piece of apple on the ground. You touch the elephant's head. You do this consecutively. Then one time you stop, and then the elephant, oh, I'm not getting my apple. So he moves his head forward. Then all of a sudden he's in the game for training. So he realizes, every time I touch that target, I get a reward. So then you can introduce it to different body parts. So if I was a transition year student and I had some spare time, learn about training animals. Because if you came to me and I was interviewing you for a trainee keeper job, and you said, I really understand the basics of positive reinforcement training, and it doesn't matter if it's an earwig or an elephant, everything can be trained. And it's no different to training a dog or a cat, even, or to an elephant. It's all positive reinforcement. So in that course, that zookeeper course, this is the kind of topics that are covered. Understanding the philosophy, people engagement, education, the role of conservation and education in a modern zoo. Its contribution to promoting conservation at home and in the wild. So that is the main course. For animals. So Sparsholt College, Hampshire. The guys can look it up if they want to find out more about it.
Yeah, what
A
we'll
lot of
do is we'll pop we'll pop some details in the bio
Yeah,
for the podcast as well. So, and links to where you're
yeah.
recommending to have a look as well.
Absolutely, they go along with that. But then the next question is like people ask me, well, tell us about working in a zoo and what's it like. And I can honestly say I worked in Dublin Zoo for 37 years, Fiona. That's when they 37 years paid. I was there since I was a baby. And I don't ever remember in that 37 years not wanting to go to work.
Yeah.
And that is the truth. And I honestly say that hand on my heart because animals, when you work with them, obviously you develop relationships, and then you have animals like that, are relying on you, their empathy, their emotional intelligence. They need you, and you need them too because it comes part of your life. So I've never but not looked forward to going into work. It's a challenging job. It's an emotional job. People often say to me, well, what's the mortality rate at the zoo? Well, I say it's 100%. Everything dies at some point, but it's how we manage it and how we take care of it. And I've had relationships with animals that I've had longer with people. I know that it's incredible. And you would have animals there like there was examples an old chimpanzee at Dublin Zoo, Wendy, and she was in the zoo since 1962. My dad looked after her. I looked after her. My brother, we all worked for her, and then eventually she passed away at the age of. She was in her late 50s, which is
Wow.
a super age, but very emotional. And
Mm.
you have to try to develop that professional detachment, but it's very hard. When your life comes and goes, and new births, though it's a huge celebration, the highs, and I remember Asha, which was the first Asian elephant born at Dublin Zoo, being there, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I was probably more excited than I was for my own two kids. But that's not really. But,
It's a
but
different
no,
kind of excitement,
it's a
Gerry.
different, yeah, no, it's a different kind of excitement, exactly, and then running home. But to see that, and to see particularly with the elephants because we had changed so much on how we take care of them. We no longer shared space with them. We didn't dominate them. We managed them, in a really a kind way. And to see all our efforts coming to fruition, and this baby arriving after 22 months gestation in its mom's belly and stumbling to this beautiful sand floor that we had created, and it's standing and walking 2 minutes after being born was just breathtaking. And so you see some incredible, and then the people aspect of it. I think it really is good to be a zookeeper and have a little bit of an outgoing personality and like being around people because on a busy day at Dublin Zoo, for example, you could have 14,000 people in, and we were
Yeah.
all so well known, and even me, particularly me too, from the Zoo TV program, which everyone wants to say hello, which is wonderful. But I love that. I'd never get bored of that. It takes
You
30,
still have
40.
a job to do.
Yeah, but it's still 30, 40 seconds to talk to people and answer a question. And so, it's good to be a people person too when you're in particularly a zoo. It's not a necessity, but people can still be introverts, and that's fine. But you do get to engage with people a lot. And then, when you get to the sorry, go ahead.
So so obviously you were saying like your second generation, your brother is also a zookeeper or worked in the zoo as well, and together as a family, the three, you have created an extra special bond that you wouldn't normally have. Like, it'd be the same. It wouldn't exactly be the same as a father and two sons working on a building site. There's not the same kind of love there.
No,
But anybody that has a family business or they're working together and from a young age. So like you said, you've been there since you were 0. So you've seen different aspects of the zoo the way I would see it with my family or anybody that's visiting the zoo. You would see behind the doors, and like we've all seen the changes, and there's amazing changes happening at the moment with the new the rebuild of the big mansion there,
yeah, yeah.
and there's always new vegetation and everything. But you obviously weren't a zookeeper from the time you were born. So when you were like a teenager, did you get to do all the little extra jobs like help feed the animals and that kind of thing? Or because it's not all there's loads of jobs within the zoo as well.
Yeah,
So did
yeah, of
you
course.
start off and then
No,
realize that you wanted to be a zookeeper?
No, listen. I always knew I wanted to be. That was for sure because we were around animals from the time I was a baby with my dad and going up to the zoo at the weekends, and I couldn't wait. But it, like exactly as you said, my one of my first jobs was working at the zoo, cleaning and picking up the litter. A very important part of the
Mm,
job. You had to go around, and and then there was the pets corner, and the pets corner was where you could work with rabbits and guinea pigs and sheep and lamb, and it was a great spawning ground for future keepers because you were
mm,
learning to work with domestic animals that may need hand rearing or little lambs and whatever was coming in. It was amazing conveyor belt of animals coming through. But it was a great spawning ground, and or the next day you could be called over to help clean out a big tank or a pool. And so I done every single job that I was asked to do. I was happy to do because you can't be selective. But there's every it's the zoo is a combination of people, and that's what brings us success to it. We have an incredible horticulture team that makes the zoo look beautiful. We've an incredible educational team. At Dublin Zoo, like over 70, 80,000 children pass through in the curriculum every year. Which
yeah.
is incredible. And then you have volunteers that give up their time and help when there's important moments, the marketing. So all these people that combine together. So there's many aspects of zoo life. Of course, everyone sees the nice one as the animals and working with them, and it is without a doubt the most pleasurable. But there's amazing other, there's plenty of other roles for people to consider. Market and media is a huge part of the zoo industry, and
Mm.
you have to have a very good marketing team and really good social media people. Your veterinary team has to be, know them, both exotic and domestic animals. You have to have stores manager that orders food for the animals, that locates the food. You have to have your maintenance team. So you can still do other jobs that are close to your heart. You might have be more skilled as a technical guy, but and yet be around animals, which is a wonderful environment. So there's many roles within that define a zoo, as I say, from catering right up to the animal keepers to the director. There's so many different roles in a modern zoo now. It's incredible because
And
it's a
you,
combination.
it is a huge combination, and there's a lot of
Yeah,
voluntary work in there as well. And like the zoo does, like so need support on not just ticket holders but also external. So the marketing side of things is reliant on getting more donors and things like that as well. So it's not people just say we're buying a ticket and that's what is keeping the zoo going. There's a lot of costs behind it. But when you were doing all these different jobs, how did you? Because you work with elephants, that's your
well, yeah,
right now, and
that's where I ended up with Fiona. But I was operations manager at Dublin Zoo. I was team leader and operations manager. So elephants, big cats, all the ape species were all, and the bears, wolves were all under my domain when as a team leader. Then I got promoted to operations manager, which was all the animals and grounds were under my care, and managing teams of 50, 60 people, yeah, all across the board. So I just happened to be elephants fascinated me, which I talk about quite a bit in the book because historically we kept them very badly in zoos. We had the biggest animal in the smallest concrete area with bars and lack of movement. Elephants can travel 50, 60 kilometers in the wild. Like, for example, today in the Alliance Zoo where I am, we have a magnificent safari. So we went out this morning long before the elephants come out. We created a massive big mud wallow. We had food where they had to go searching and climbing over mounds and hills, motivational movement, searching, stretching, bending, climbing hills, social interaction, swimming together in the pool. So different to the old days where the animals were just put on show, they were gawked at. And thankfully, we've left that behind. But zoos need to continue to evolve, and they need to continue to develop, and they are. And Dublin Zoo is at the epicenter of that kind of progressive movement, like you just mentioned, that new conservation house, the IUCN conservation house, where Dublin Zoo and the director Christoph is very, very conservation orientated. He's an excellent, track in conservation, and he wants to do so much more at home and abroad, because everybody considers conservation. If you say conservation to people, and particularly students, they tend to say, "Oh yeah, that there's a problem in Africa or the Brazilian rainforest."
Mm,
Ireland has huge conservation issues with species and plants, and that needs management and care and support. So, conservation starts at home, and then so it's good for the zoo to be leading the way on that. So I congratulate them. A lot has changed even since I've left, but it's always a place that'll be dear to my heart, and I'll always be there to support it. And it's doing tremendous work, and zoos generally are now. They are conservation centres that are reaching out, and their tentacles are going all to communities all across the globe. They're educating, they're doing great work. The species that are kept in there are endangered species.
mm.
I'm also working with Howlett's Wild Animal Park in the UK as the consultant on a project there where hopefully next year we will be releasing 13 African elephants back to Kenya, to the wild. Now, they won't be just dropped
Oh,
into the wild, they'll go to a reserve first, but it's a world first. It's the first time
wow.
that they've gone back. And here, like where I'm working in the Allion Zoo, the Arabian oryx was saved from extinction at this zoo and released back to the wild. So, we need more of that. We need more of it. We need it to be happening on a much more regular basis. But we are seeing, and I'm seeing, and I travel to many zoos globally as a consultant, I'm seeing such a beautiful increase in wellness and caring and designing for animals now. Now we look at the animal, its biology, its physiology, it's how it lives, how it interacts with the environment, the social groupings it lives in. We plan for this resource movement, as I mentioned, where they come out, they have purpose, they have meaningful lives, that they have life plans depending when they're young, whether
Mm,
puberty, whether geriatric, all their life stages are managed now, to where kindness and care are at the forefront of what we do. So, we have to keep going, and I implore the people, support your local zoo, support Dublin Zoo. The work it's doing is tremendous. I
mm.
mean, there's been, and I can't, I've seen it. I've been there in the 80s. I was there as a young kid when we were going to supermarkets on a Friday and Saturday to collect the bread that wasn't sold. Remember they used to have these fancy salad displays, and
Yeah.
that for people coming in where they scoop up some coleslaw, and we would take all the remaining salads and bring it up to feed the animals because the zoo was so poor. And then
Mm,
it went through this one, which again, it's a lot of it's in the book. We went through this wonderful cycle of support. We had some fantastic directors, Peter Wilson, who worked with the government at the time to get funding and extra land in Orison Uachtaráin, made us reinvent ourselves. Then we got some money. Bertie Ahern was the Taoiseach. Money was given to the zoo. And then in the early 2000s, we had a director called Leo Oosterwegel came in. Leo had a lot of international experience, a very shrewd man, a very smart man, but he had a very clear vision of where the zoo needed to be. And he
mm,
built the infrastructure, got the infrastructure right, start designing for animals, brought us on a journey with him, and he brought in people from the USA, Jones and Jones. But he brought it. I learned so much, during that era. That's what got me where I am today. Now I'm educating people because I was lucky enough to be in that era of the zoo, and where we had such a visionary director, and to take us to where we were going. And we had a wonderful team of dedicated people, and there was a time in the 80s when you'd be taking off your uniform going home because you were almost embarrassed because people were complaining about the polar bears going back and forward in a stereotypical behavior because of the monkeys on concrete floors, because of the
mm.
lack of space, to a point where you were walking around as proud as punch with your uniform because we had changed. And which I mentioned in the book too, the Zoo TV program was a real catalyst for people understanding what we were doing. And it was amazing because it's one of the longest running Zoo TV shows in the world now. It's going into its 12th, 13th year with Shane Brennan and Moondance Productions. They've been part of our team, and we're there. And what happened was, and again, it was Leo Oosterwegel, the director, who was adamant when he had opportunities to sanction and allow a show many times, but he said, no, we're not ready, we're not ready, we're not ready, because he wanted
Mm,
the cameras to be able to go in the back and anywhere behind the scenes, and people say, okay, that looks good, or it's appropriate and it's right for the animals. So
Mm,
all this was put right before Leo gave the green light for it to happen. But I'll never forget talking to him when he said, Gerry, what it will be honesty. It will be an
yeah,
honest account of zoo life. It will not be all about baby animals, cute little baby animals. And he was true to his word, because we had some really, sad scenes of animals, iconic animals. Sheila the lioness, who was there for over 20 years in the zoo,
yeah,
where yeah, she was euthanized and put asleep live on television. Next day, all the people are, how are the keepers? Is everybody okay? We had a monkey carrying her dead baby for 2 days because she wanted to see if it
yeah,
would come alive. But this is zoo life. This is the
yeah,
reality of zoo life. And this was depicted in the show so well. And then, like, people would stop you on the street and say, Jesus, that's a really is an emotional roller coaster show that, you don't know whether to be laughing or crying. But that's
yeah,
exactly what we wanted. But for me, culturally, it changed the zoo so much, because we were
mhm,
saying to the people, listen, when you come to the zoo, it's their home. You come, they first, you come second. Be
yeah,
respectful. They're not. It's not a circus. They're not there to perform. If you don't see the animal, come back later on. Watch them,
exactly, yeah,
embrace them. And that's so. And I went from the 80s, when I was a kid, where people were coming in with bags of fruit and throwing them into the monkeys, to people coming in and being kind and asking questions and saying, oh, tell us about the animals. And they followed the story on the Zoo TV show, and they became part of it. They knew Harry the gorilla. They knew, Bernardina, the elephant. They knew Wendy the chimpanzee, and they would ask you questions. So, what the show done was a powerful insight into the reality of zoo life. But what people seen, and was the passion. And that's why, for the students, you become so engrossed in this job. It's a beautiful job to have. But people seen the passion and the dedication. There was times 2, 3, 4 in the morning, I'd have to get up out of my bed. Not just me, other plenty of keepers, and go into the zoo to treat a sick animal, or
mm,
watch something happening, or be there to support an animal. So, you never really switch off. It's not a
yeah,
9 to 5 job. You're there, and thankfully now with modern technology was brilliant, because that changed a lot. Because when I was operations manager, I would have on my phone all the cameras of the animal habitats. Now we put in CCTV, so we can observe when the hours we're not there, and we could watch the
right,
animals, watch the relationships, who's sleeping with who's feeding, and if we had to make adjustments, we would do that, based on what we so what happened. And what that means was, we were now managing animals over a 24-hour period. We were not just turning the key when we went home and hoping, we were looking in at the
yeah, none
elephants.
of the chimps would have a fight with each other and come
Yeah,
into
but
the zoo
like,
the next morning and seeing seeing the
yeah,
aftermath.
but technology is a wonderful thing. Like, we have a system called feed pods, and you would look in at the elephants. And feed pods is an electronic automated feeding system. So you would look in. I actually done it one time. This is the truth. I was flying home from America, and I looked in at Uppally the bull. I was 33,000 feet up in the air. I looked at Uppally on the camera. He was starting to rise, and I was able to send in a text for the machine to feed him, and it scattered out the food to him. Sent me back a text, Gerry, Uppally has been fed. Like, that's
Wow.
the kind of that's the kind of technology that we're harvesting now. And so the animals have 24-hour care. So it's
Mm,
not like the old, because that's what used to sadden me. And when I was a young keeper in the 80s, you would close the door at 5 o'clock, and I would say, it's not going to get any better now till I come in the morning. Now, with proper design and the habitats, animals have choice, opportunity, control over their own day. They now go outside when they want. They come in when they want. They have autonomy. They have everything. And then what I know now is, when all the zoos that I'm working in, what I make sure happens is that when we go home, the whole place just comes alive. It becomes
yeah,
alive of opportunities. And so, for this morning, like, for example, here at Alliance Zoo, I watched the elephants for over 3 hours, and it was an incredible experience. I meant nothing to them. I was non-existent in their life. They didn't care. In the old days, the animals would see it and say, "Oh, here's the keeper. Hopefully, something's going to happen." But for me now, this is the success. Gerry means nothing now. Now they don't
okay,
know that this morning. I was there making sand wallows, making browse with the team, hiding all these food artifacts. So what we were doing is you're creating for all the opportunities for them to express natural behavior. But so it's just they encounter all the food sources, everything that elephants do, the socialization together. And just to see them for this 3 hours this morning in Alenzo, I said, wow, we're really, this was exactly like the wild elephants behaving together. The
Okay.
cohesion, they played together, they rolled in the mud together, they touched one another. They're very touchy, they're very olfactory. They broke trees that we had planted, they broke down branches, they rolled down the sand mounds after going into the water, they trumpeted together, they celebrated, they walked along together. But Gerry meant nothing in their life. So that's exactly the way it should be now, that they're not depending or watching the keeper to see what's going to happen. So, we're giving them motivation, giving them reason to explore every single inch of the area. Maybe if I flip over this rock over here, there could be an apple underneath it. Sometimes there is, sometimes there's not. And that
Yeah.
you sometimes you create a little bit of disappointment, but through that disappointment, they go on and search somewhere else. And
Yeah.
eventually they find this big jackpot of food, and then the herd comes together and feed as it naturally would in the wild. So this is the dynamic approach that we have now, Fiona. And I mentioned that quite a bit in the book. So, I mean, as I say, the book is a great true life story of a kid from inner city Dublin that wanted to get out there, wanted to make a difference for animals, I had a hugely successful career in Dublin Zoo. It's a zoo that I'll always love. It'll always be close to my heart, but I'd outgrown that role. Now
Mm,
I'm a global ambassador. I'm working with elephants in many different countries. As I say, these elephants from UAE, they had to be taken from the wild because of human elephant conflict, and they
yeah.
were dropped here. So now I'm creating a lifestyle that's so similar to what they're living like in the wild. I'm involved in hopefully elephants going back to the wild, and I do so many other things too. Like when I'm back in Dublin, I help with the DSPCA or Dublin City Council, with dangerous dogs. I have to dart dogs and go into some terrible situations where dogs are not being catered for or cared for. So it certainly is an exciting role. It certainly is, it's been an incredible adventure, and it's all depicted so well in the book.
Did you ever ask your dad why or how he got into the zoo? Because obviously you
Oh yeah, well,
started because of your dad. But do you think if your dad didn't work in the zoo, this would have been the path you would have taken anyway?
yeah, how do you see it? Kind of, it's very hard to imagine. I mean, the affinity with animals. But my dad, again, the book intro is very much about his generation in the zoo and how he started. His family were Guinness's family. His father worked in Guinness's, but he kind of told his dad, it was all lined up for my dad to go to Guinness's, but he said no, he wanted a zoo. And look, in them days, he lived in the local area. I lived later on in Ivor Street, and they used to take on pony boys on the summertime because in them days there was a great source of revenue for the zoo was
Yeah.
giving little pony rides. So my dad started as a pony boy, and then that
Right.
he was hooked, and then he was hooked, and then he met my mum there. They got married. He met my mum in the restaurant. She worked in the restaurant, so we're just so connected with the zoo for so long. And so I listen. There was a time I was a very good amateur boxer, and my dad then I used to one time my dad was saying, oh, like the zoo wasn't a pretty place then, it needed help. No, listen,
Yeah.
you need to get a better job, you need to go. And they wanted me to go. There was an apprentice glazer, and I said I can't be a glazer. If I cut me hand, I won't be able to box anymore. That was my excuse. But my dad could see me passion, and then and there's been no regrets. It's been a constant a constant flow of design, in terms of my personal career. It's just excel. And I like, it was a scary part for me, which I mentioned in the book, like after being in the zoo for so long. But there was new management. I worked with the previous director, and with new management comes new change. And I just said, now is the time, if I'm ever going to do it, to be a consultant globally.
Mm.
And I was nervous, and I never forget driving out of zoo that final day, and I pulled in up the park, and I got really upset, and I said, I felt like I was letting the animals down, and I was betraying them, and why have I done this? But the phone just started ringing the next day. Gerry, we hear that you're a consultant now. Can you come here? I went to San Diego. I've been to China. I've been
Wow.
to Israel. I've been to UAE. I've been to England. I've been to France. I've been to Germany. And so many zoos. And people just love my energy and my modern philosophy for how we need to improve things for animals and and to be a zookeeper and to support zoos. I will continue to do that. I'll always be the zookeeper at heart. Although I'm a consultant, I'm a zookeeper, and
Yeah.
it's just been an incredible journey. I love the work that zoos are doing around the world. People just randomly say, "Oh, a zoo is awful," without even checking out the good work that they're doing. Don't be. That's anachronistic. Don't just say it for the
Mm.
sake of saying it. There is no such thing as the wild, Fiona, anymore, or it's
No,
certainly limited. But we have to try protect what's left of the wild, try to pull back
definitely.
from the devastation that we're causing and creating down there. And zoos are the way forward. Zoos are the sanctuaries now for many, many species. And zoos will be their lifeline, and zoos will hopefully be the way that we can reintroduce them back to the wild in the future when these countries become stable. But we need to get the climate under control. We need to get so much under control. That's
Yeah.
that's the key.
But everything that is connected, and if we all looked after one piece of it and build it, like with the zoo and looking after your own local area for environment and wildlife and that kind of
Yeah,
thing, everybody does their own little piece. It will
exactly,
make your world an awful lot better as well.
exactly.
But there is something I remember, like when you go and visit the zoo, we go to Dublin Zoo quite a lot, and people in Cork would go to Photo
Photo.
Wildlife. But when you go, like I remember the bears, kind of, I think. And you're like thinking back to when you were a kid, well, when I was a kid, back in the 80s and the 90s, when we came over, like, what animals were in the zoo back then and why they're not there now. So I do hear when you're walking around, you do hear other people kind of saying, oh, I remember there was, like you mentioned, the polar bears, or I'm pretty sure there was wolves here, or there was this
Yeah,
here, or there was that here. And like species do change within the zoo as well.
yeah.
Um, some of them stay forever, like the elephants and the gorillas and the chimps. But there are and the orangutans. They're part of the zoo. I love going there. My
But there would be
youngest 2 year old,
those
she
species
does
would
that.
change. Like, males and females would change for breeding purposes. But
Yeah,
exactly. But in the 80s, in them days, 70s, 80s, a lot of it was done through animal dealing. There was animal dealers,
yeah,
and they would supply zoos. But thankfully, that's all gone now. Now there's a thing called EASA, which is the European Association of Zoos and Aquariums.
okay,
I think it's 450, 500 zoos work collectively. Every year they meet, they have a strategy. This animal needs help. Let's work together to save it. They,
mm,
they they all work collectively. It's all the zoos working together. They don't deal with animal dealers. They don't sell animals. There's no monetary value put on animals. It's all done through proper international agreements that secure and make sure the keepers and or the animals are safe in this process. The animals
yeah,
will never get into illegal hands. They will only go to standard zoos, that zoos have the same standards, guidelines, principles for taking care of animals. So it's a wonderful organization, EASA, and the smaller version is BIASA, and they are like almost like they're governing the zoos, and everybody buys into their philosophies and buys into the agreement of working together for the betterment of the species and for improving standards and welfare across the zoos in all over the world.
And so we're talking to transition year students and senior cycle students.
Yeah.
We speak with them on a very regular basis, and I know you've gone into schools as well. But there's only one of you, Gerry. If we could photocopy you and have a few of you going around, that would be fantastic. But I know everybody in the zoo has, in whatever zoo, if it's Photo Wildlife or the zoo here in Dublin or Belfast or even in the UK, it doesn't matter where you are. Can schools reach out to the zoo to have? Would people come from? I know you go to schools, or you
Yeah, but
have.
as I say, Dublin Zoo has an absolutely incredible education team, and
Yeah,
they do the biology modules, they do everything for schools to come in, and they take them out to the park to look at biodiversity. So that's what it's the schools can reach out to the educational department of Dublin Zoo who have some incredibly informative, educational programs for specifically tailored for schools of all different ages. The zoo has its educational format has just excelled in recent years. Aileen Tennant is the head of that department now, and she's got a very passionate team. They reach out to schools all over the country. They provide, because it's about education. They
Yeah.
provide some incredible workshops, and they've got lots of support and resources to help zoos. Or to help schools, excuse me. So go and reach out to the education department at Dublin Zoo. It's a phenomenal
It doesn't matter
energy.
where you are in the country. There is a
Absolutely not.
connection there.
There's a way of connecting, and they can do Zoom. They do Zoom classrooms, and schools love coming to the zoo anyway. And then
Yeah.
they can meet them. But they have educational programs tailor made to fit the requirements from babies right up to leaving cert, right up to college students. It covers everything. That's what the modern zoo does, and Dublin Zoo's education program is particularly vibrant.
And you going on your own career, so you're a zookeeper. You were a zookeeper. You will always be a zookeeper. Like you said, even though you're a consultant now, you've been on the telly. You've done the educational side with RT Junior as well. You didn't just do the zoo program. So our viewers will recognize you from lots of TV work anyway, Gerry. And then obviously the natural progression in that side of it is write a book, which I know is going to be under my Christmas tree this year anyway. It's very hard not to sneak right through and read the whole book, but I did have a sneaky view look at it there, and it is a very exciting book. Like, did somebody convince you to do it, or was it a natural step for you to write it?
I have to. It was always in the back of my mind, but I kind of felt I was still a bit too young that I would do it closer to my retirement. But then Gill Books actually approached me. They said, "Gerry, can we meet with you?" I said, yeah, sure. So we met at the Shelbourne Hotel. They said, listen, Gerry, have you ever thought of writing a book? I said, I have. I said, but I was waiting for a couple more years because I've started a consultancy now, and I still think I have a lot more stories to tell. And they said, no, listen, we've been following you. And just like you said, Fiona, I said, we've been following you for years. And from your from being on the Den and Zig and Zag and every TV program. I was on the Late Late Show a few times, to what you've done with the Zoo TV program, your boxing career, and we just think it's a great story. Would you consider it? I said, yeah. So anyway, listen, when they supported me, they showed me what to do. Gills were amazing. What happened is then they put me with a ghostwriter, Louise Creighton, and she's been amazing. She's a real dub too. We hit it off straight away. And I would be traveling away, and I'd be talking into my phone and sending her all the voice messages. Then she would type it up, and then she'd say, read over that. I'd say, no, change that. That doesn't sound like me. And so we done that over whatever 6-10 months, and then because it was very important that my story came true, but I didn't actually have it physically right, and I just spent hours and hours and hours giving voice files over. So and Gills were amazing. Louise was amazing. The response has been amazing. Like, it's been nominated. It was nominated for Biography of the Year in itself, which was a phenomenal achievement. So
you were just recently at an award ceremony.
Yeah, that's it. That was it. So, listen, I'm very lucky where I am. I'm very happy where I am. It's been an amazing journey, and there's still so much I can do. There's still so much I want to do for animals and elephants around the world. My company, Global Elephant Care, is going from strength to strength. We're making a difference, and we're going to continue to do that. And we're going to be the voice for the elephant, and keep shouting loud, or trumpeting loud.
And can people get in touch with you about your own consultancy and how getting involved in that side of it? Maybe not going down the zoo route, but
absolutely. I'm always there. I mean, the people can follow me on Facebook. You'll see my page. I put up elephant stuff all the time. Follow me if you want to ask me questions. Absolutely, I'm always get back to you. I'll always answer anyone that wants to know about animals. But feel free for them to follow me on my Facebook page. Some great stuff I put up every day about animals, and particularly elephants, and videos and really nice animal stories, educational, all the things that's happening around the world with the species and what we can do to help them. So yeah, please feel free. And if anyone has a message, just go through that. Contact me on Messenger or whatever. I'll always be happy to reply.
Yeah, what we can also do is put out there to students and teachers, if they have any questions after watching the podcast,
absolutely,
to send them on in. We'll put links down the bottom they can either contact you directly or they can come through TYHub. We can have more chats about it. I think you're there for a few weeks. Are you going to be home for Christmas?
Yeah, well, at the moment, I'll probably be here for Christmas, but thankfully, my family are coming over now. Where
Oh,
we plan to.
lovely.
My family are going to come over and they're going to spend it in the desert with me and
Wow.
Mia and Zach and my wife Leona. But Mia and Zach and particularly Mia is showing great aptitude. She loves the elephants. She's been with me on some jobs, so she's looking forward. There's an elephant here called Bahati who was born in the zoo 10 months ago, and Bahati is an Afrikaner word that means she who brings happiness, and she really did bring happiness to the herd here. And my daughter Mia named her, so she's coming to finally meet her.
Brilliant. That's
Yeah, so
lovely.
yeah, cool.
And like that for your whole family, it's new experiences as well.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
when you're going along, you're learning, you're traveling the world with this. It's not, at home. There's lots of opportunities. You were talking about when we were chatting earlier on about Nairobi and elephants being moved and from the UK over to being reintroduced into the
Yeah,
wild in Africa. That's just like all these amazing stories. Your passion
amazing.
is just it it it's infectious. Like
Thank you. No,
you're contagious with it, but it's a good contagion. So
thank you.
we I know we all loved watching the zoo and on the den and oh god, Zig and Zag, remember them? I don't know how you had the den.
Uh,
It was like two
There used to
hyperactive
be
kids.
absolute mayhem. I remember the first time I went in and I kind of had my little script and I'll say this and I'll say that. After about a minute, I said, forget it because they were just off the wall. And then it was so much fun. Like then I used to go out nearly every week with them, and which was great. We just to have a laugh, but it was always good to try and get a little message across. And that's what I love about they being given the opportunity now. And thanks for saying what you're saying about because my passion is my passion. It really is what I want to get that message across, and I'll help anyone. It could be a small audience of kindergarten kids, or I could be talking to government ministers, or I could be in America talking to CEOs. My passion is always the same. It's to get the message across that we can do more.
Well, I'd love to have more chats with you if you want to come over, like come
Absolutely.
on again and tell us a bit more about the following couple of weeks that you're going to have now.
No problem.
How
No
you're
problem.
getting on with the elephants over there. Keep
Sure.
in touch and let us know what's got. Well, I'm following you anyway, so
Yeah.
I'm going
No,
to be
absolutely, Fiona.
following
Every couple of months, let's do an update. I'd be delighted because
you.
I'll also some stories and maybe the next time we can do kind of a presentation on Zoom and I can show you some pictures and some facilities and some videos. That will be absolutely breathtaking of the work that's happening.
We'll have a chat off air about what we can do in the future. We
Cool.
definitely love to be chatting with you again. Take care in the heat over there while
Yeah. Oof.
we're about to get hit with the snow according to Met Aaron.
That
So
is
uh, total different
just
sides of the
but
world.
it's just what you want. The red-headed Irishman stuck in the desert.
I know, yeah.